Всім добрий вечір.
On behalf of the brave, on behalf of every father and every mother wings for freedom, on behalf of our warriors, and paves the way for a new history.
Hello and welcome to Tochnyi Weekly, the show that gets behind the headlines to discuss the Russian invasion of Ukraine. We have a great stream for you today. Please, if you could, hit the like button and subscribe, and also hit that little bell down there so they tell you when we're streaming. Sometimes we do special events. We release video updates on things, so it'll help keep you appraised of what we're up to. We also have social media. You can check us out on Twitter and Blue Sky. And of course, we have our website where we publish a lot of great research on things like Russian economy, Russian weapons manufacturing, Russian military positions, all kinds of drone strikes. There's all kinds of stuff on the website these days. So you got to go see it for yourself. I can't explain everything that's on there for you. You can head on over to tochnyi.info anytime to see more detailed information about all of our research. And this week, of course, first we'll be doing my news segment. Of course, that was before I finished that before the big news this week. The planes go boom. So we'll talk about that a little bit after the news segment. Of course, before the planes went boom, the big story this week is that there's a rather large aid package from Germany. So we'll be hearing an update from Mr. German Aid to Ukraine. I'm sure a little bit about that. And then finally, we will have a little discussion about the planes, as I said, and then we'll go to Q&A. So without any delay, then, I'll go ahead and jump into the news. These are the main headlines as of June 1st, 2025. First up, we have operations. Unmanned aerial vehicles targeted a facility in Yelabuga associated with the manufacturing of Shahed-type drones. Reports from independent sources such as Astra indicated that the explosions were heard in the city. Initial blasts occurred at approximately 10:40 p.m. local time and are believed to be related to air defense activity. Despite air defenses being active, further detonations were recorded near the factory, which is located within the Alabuga Special Economic Zone. Videos circulating from residents show what appears to be a missile launch from the area during the response, with the smoke trail visible in the footage. The regional airport Nizhnekamsk temporarily halted operations during the incident. Authorities in Tatarstan have not provided any official statements about the situation or its impact. This particular drone plant, constructed in 2023, has been targeted multiple times in recent months. A similar operation took place on April 23rd, but local officials also withheld details during that time. The facility is situated roughly 1,200 kilometers from Ukraine's border, suggesting the use of long-range strike drones. Despite the range, the operation appears to have reached its target successfully. A fire broke out at the Avangard electronics plant in St. Petersburg during the early hours of May 29th, following a series of reported explosions. The incident was widely circulated on local Telegram channels and confirmed by city officials. Video footage shared online shows a large blaze engulfing the rooftop of the facility, located in the Kalininsky district. Initial assessments suggest the fire started around 1 a.m. and was concentrated on the 5th floor of a 6-story building, affecting an estimated 100 square meters. The plant is known for producing microelectronics and microcircuits, although no specific details about the damaged equipment or materials have been released. The cause of the fire has not been determined, and there has been no statement from Ukraine's military regarding any involvement. Authorities did not report any Ukrainian drone activity in the area leading up to the event. A Ukrainian drone strike targeted a key Russian defense facility in the city of Murom during the night of May 27th, according to reporting by Astra. The attack, which occurred nearly 700 kilometers from Ukraine's border, involved 11 unmanned aerial vehicles. While Russian defenses managed to intercept 3 of them, the remaining drones reportedly hit their designated targets. The strike focused on the Murom instrument-making plant, a major military industrial site. Eyewitnesses and local sources reported multiple blasts at the location, prompting the evacuation of approximately 70 workers into bomb shelters. Although the full scale of the damage is being assessed, early accounts indicate that explosions caused structural impacts in at least 2 workshops, blowing out windows and dislodging doors. The regional governor confirmed that 3 separate buildings within the industrial zone sustained damage. This facility has previously come under attack. On April 30th, a fire broke out following another drone incident, affecting a warehouse with a footprint of 720 square meters. The Murom instrument plant plays a significant role in Russian defense manufacturing, serving as the country's largest producer of ammunition primers and operating under the Techmash division of the Rostec State Corporation. Due to its military ties, the facility has been subject to Ukrainian and European sanctions since 2023. Explosions occurred Friday morning in Vladivostok. Am I reading that right? Yep, says Vladivostok were reportedly the result of a Ukrainian military intelligence operation, according to multiple Ukrainian media outlets citing informed sources. The blast took place in Desantnaya Bay, an N, a T, followed by an N, thanks Russian, an area adjacent to the base of Russia's 47th Separate Air Assault Battalion, which operates under the 155th Guards Naval Infantry Brigade. According to the reports, 2 detonations were recorded, one near a checkpoint and another in the vicinity of the unit's personnel and command areas. These strikes are believed to have affected both military personnel and equipment, including specialized assets. The 155th Brigade has been heavily involved in combat operations during the invasion of Ukraine, with prior deployments in Mariupol and Volhedar, as well as participation in Russian operations near the Kursk region. Initially, local authorities claimed that the explosions were accidental, attributing them to a fire caused by a propane-butane gas canister igniting inside a vehicle. The Regional Anti-Terrorism Commission stated that there were no injuries. However, reports contradicted this version of events, noting that access roads were closed off in advance and a helicopter was observed in the area prior to the explosion, suggesting premeditated activity rather than a random incident. Man, Ukraine's even hitting Vladivostok these days. Russia has recently announced a new and unusual weapon in its ongoing strike campaign against Ukraine, a repurposed target drone known as the Don-M. Originally developed in the early 1990s by the Sokol Design Bureau for Air Defense Training, the Don-M is a 350-kilogram jet-powered UAV designed to simulate the flight of cruise missiles like the American Tomahawk. It can fly up to 40 minutes at low altitudes and subsonic speeds, and is typically recovered via a parachute after training missions. However, Russian forces have now begun to modify these drones for one-way attacks by replacing their parachute recovery systems with explosive warheads and repainting them for concealment. On or before May 30th, 3 such drones were launched from Crimea towards Ukraine. While it's unclear whether these particular drones reached their targets, the move signals a shift in how Russia is using this legacy hardware. These modifications are relatively straightforward, essentially converting a reusable training drone into a disposable strike weapon by putting a big bomb in it. Ukraine followed a similar approach earlier in the war, adapting the Tu-141 and Tu-143 reconnaissance drones into long-range strike platforms due to limited access to purpose-built systems. However, Ukraine has since advanced its drone production capabilities and no longer relies on these stopgap solutions. There is uncertainty about Russia's motives for arming the Don-Ms. Ukrainian drone expert Serhiy Beskretsnov noted that Ukraine has used similar adaptations out of necessity, whereas Russia is not known to be short on modern munitions. In fact, its strike capabilities appear to be growing, with recent large-scale attacks involving hundreds of drones and missiles, including sophisticated models like the KH-101 and the KH-555. One possibility is that Russia just has a surplus of Don-M units made obsolete by the current war, making them available for repurposing. Turning them into one-way munitions allows the Russian military to increase its volume of attacks, even if these drones are less advanced. While not a particularly effective weapon, each additional drone does contribute to a broader campaign aimed at overwhelming Ukrainian defenses and targeting civilian infrastructure. Up next, we have economy and aid. Discarded fishing nets from Denmark and Sweden are now playing a critical role on Ukraine's front lines, repurposed as a defense against Russian aerial drone attacks, according to reporting by Finland's YLE on May 25th. These nets, once used by fishermen and made obsolete by shifting regulations, are now being stretched above the trenches and shelters to intercept and disrupt oncoming drones and munitions. The Danish nets in particular became surplus after Danish access to UK fishing grounds was restricted post-Brexit. Instead of being discarded, they were donated to Ukraine. According to YLE, reports from earlier this year indicate that Denmark had sent nets valued at roughly 2.5 million euros. God, Denmark's so great. Private aid groups and individuals have also contributed. Bernard Christensen, a volunteer involved with a Polish-Ukrainian support network, told Swedish media that every type of net is valuable and that Ukrainian forces have found a use for all donations they receive. These nets help delay the detonation of aerial munitions and can physically block drones by tangling their propellers before they reach their targets. Russia has faced similar drone threats and has adopted the same tactic, using netting to shield roads and logistical paths. We at Tochnyi are big-time net watchers, so you'll always hear the latest net updates from us. Ukraine's cabinet of ministers has approved a measure to secure nearly $3 billion in financial support from Japan, with a loan backed from profits generated from frozen Russian assets. The prime minister announced the move during a government session on May 30th, and he stated the funds will be directed towards essential state budget needs, marking a significant injection of external financing tied to international efforts targeting Russian state assets held abroad. In addition to the Japanese-backed loan, Shmihal confirmed that Ukraine has achieved a staff-level agreement with the International Monetary Fund as part of the ongoing evaluation of its economic assistance program. This marks the 8th such review, and pending IMF Executive Board approval, Ukraine expects to receive a new tranche of roughly $500 million. Ukraine has decided to withhold a $665 million payment on its government debt after negotiations to restructure part of its financial obligations failed, according to a May 30th report by Bloomberg. The missed payment is tied to GDP-linked securities, a type of debt instrument that obliges Ukraine to make additional payouts to creditors based on country's economic performance. Despite the missed obligation, the finance ministry emphasized Ukraine's ongoing commitment to reaching a fair, comprehensive restructuring agreement with bondholders. The decision follows an earlier announcement on April 24th, when Ukraine confirmed it was unable to finalize a deal to restructure roughly $2.6 billion in debt. The lack of agreement raised concerns of a potential default on upcoming payments, which now appears to have occurred. While Ukraine insists it will continue working within the terms of its agreements with the International Monetary Fund and official partners, the IMF has expressed concern. The organization warned that unresolved issues surrounding the GDP warrants could put Ukraine's broader debt restructuring efforts at risk, along with the $15.6 billion bailout package under the Extended Fund facility. In July of 2024, Ukraine reached a deal with some international creditors to restructure around $20 billion in bonds, helping the country avoid an immediate default amid the ongoing war. That process, completed in September, has resulted in a $9 billion reduction in the state's external debt burden. However, these unresolved GDP-linked securities remain a sticking point. Ukraine's energy regulator has approved a key step to boost natural gas imports through the Trans-Balkan corridor, enabling the country to bring in up to 1 billion cubic meters of gas annually from Greece. The National Energy and Utilities Regulatory Commission endorsed the initiative during its meeting on May 27th, according to Ukrinform. The decision follows a joint proposal from the gas transmission system operators of Bulgaria, Greece, Moldova, Romania, and Ukraine. These national operators submitted a plan to establish a coordinated product for booking gas transport capacity along the Trans-Balkan corridor, a critical route that connects southeastern Europe's gas infrastructure. In addition to approving the joint product, the organization authorized Ukraine to hold auctions for cross-border transmission capacity with Moldova and Romania. The auctions will be conducted on the final Thursday of each month for June of 2025 by the regional booking platform. The approved framework creates a unified auction system covering all transit points along the route from Greece to Ukraine, translating to a daily capacity of approximately 3 million cubic meters. And just to be clear, this would be liquid natural gas coming in from Greece. Ukraine is deploying AI-controlled gun turrets as part of its response to the sharp rise in Russian drone attacks, according to a May 28th report by Forbes. These radar-guided systems operate autonomously without human involvement and are capable of protecting an area the size of a small city. The initiative is supported by United 24, Ukraine's official fundraising platform, which is currently seeking $1.5 million to deploy 10 of these units. The move follows a record-breaking drone barrage on May 26th when Ukraine's Air Force reported intercepting 355 incoming drones on a single night, numbers that nearly equal the drone totals for entire months in 2024. Russia continues to produce large quantities of Shahed drones based on Iranian designs. Newer variants are equipped with shrapnel-based or cluster munitions aimed at causing maximum damage to civilian areas. Ukraine's interception effectiveness has declined from 95% to 84% in recent weeks, attributed to tighter drone formations and increased flight altitudes. Some drones are flying above 4,000 meters, making them harder to target with standard mobile defenses or manned systems. At the same time, high-end interceptor solutions, such as Patriot missiles, are unsustainable for daily use due to their limited supply and high cost. Just 650 missiles are produced annually in the U.S., insufficient against nightly drone waves in the hundreds. The AI-powered Sky Sentinel turret system offers a scalable alternative. Mounted on a mobile trailer, it uses radar to detect incoming threats and a standard heavy machine gun for interception. The turret can rotate a full 360 degrees and has been engineered to fire accurately, even at high-speed targets, reportedly hitting drones traveling up to 500 miles per hour, far faster than the 120 mile per hour speed of a typical Shahed drone. Ukrainian developers engineered the system domestically, focusing on precision and reliability. The fire control software factors in wind and atmospheric conditions and is trained to differentiate drones from birds or other objects. Mechanical tolerances were minimized to ensure stability and targeting consistency, achieving precision as tight as 17 microradians, roughly 1/10 of an inch of deviation at a distance of 1,000 yards. Engineers emphasized the integration of mechanical, optical, and software components with no room for slack or delay. According to the team, all subsystems must operate in perfect synchronization for the turret to be effective in real-world conditions. A prototype has already been deployed and has successfully brought down 4 Shahed drones in field conditions. In Ukraine's defense strategy, Sky Sentinel will form the innermost ring of a layered air defense system. It will operate alongside long-range interceptors, guided missiles, and aerial counter-drones to create a comprehensive multi-tiered system. Ukraine has received its first delivery of UAT TISA armored vehicles developed specifically for the country's defense forces. The announcement was made by the manufacturer on social media. The new vehicles are designed to enhance mobility, protection, and versatility in frontline operations. Built on the reinforced Toyota LC79 chassis, the UAT TISA combines lightweight construction with durability. It conforms to NATO AEP STANAG 4569 Level 1 protection standards, I'm sure those are good, which provide defense against small arms fire and shell fragments. Each unit has been tested, codified for use in Ukraine, and assigned a NATO stock number. The armored vehicle supports various combat roles, including cargo transport, reconnaissance, and mobile team deployment. It features a rotating machine gun mount with a protective shield and is fitted with armored doors that open in opposite directions, a design that provides cover for troops as they dismount. Internal spall liners offer additional protection from fragmentation, and the inclusion of run-flat tire inserts ensure the vehicle can keep moving even if the tires are punctured. The model addresses both crew survivability and comfort. It includes air conditioning, heating, and ventilation systems, and for stealth operations, it has a light masking mode using special low-visibility headlights to reduce detection risks. Weighing just 5.5 tons fully loaded, the vehicle is optimized for fast maneuvering in combat zones. Optional enhancements include night vision with driver display, VHF communications, satellite navigation, electronic warfare systems, and mounts for additional weapon platforms. And up next, we have international relations. Bulgaria's Center for the Study of Democracy and Finland's Center for Research on Energy and Clean Air both released a report that stated that Hungary and Slovakia remain deeply dependent on Russian oil, gas, and nuclear fuel, despite having the technical capacity to shift to alternative sources. Hungary increased its reliance on Russian crude from 61% in 2021 to 86% by 2024, while Slovakia remains at 87% in 2024. The two countries imported 8.7 million tons of Russian oil, sending an estimated 5.4 billion euros to the Kremlin. While alternatives like the Adria pipeline exist, both countries have failed to pivot meaningfully, with Hungary halting nearly all non-Russian crude imports that year. The Hungarian energy firm MOL, which owns the only refineries in both countries, plays a central role in this dependency. Although not directly state-owned, the government influences MOL through politically aligned foundations. Despite booking non-Russian oil volumes, MOL underdelivered on these contracts while continuing to process discounted Russian crude. This generated $1.7 billion in excess profits between 2022 and 2024, little of which benefited the state due to declining windfall tax revenues. Hungary and Slovakia also exploited legal loopholes to export petroleum products made from Russian crude to Czechia, extending exemptions well beyond their intended expiration dates. In 2024, Slovakia exported around 520 million euros worth of such products, and Hungary another 40 million. Both countries have similarly failed to cut back on Russian gas. Unlike most of the EU, which has slashed pipeline gas imports from Russia by over 80%, France and Belgium and Spain need to cut theirs more though. Hungary and Slovakia only reduced theirs by 5.5%, increasing dependency via the Turk Stream pipeline. Hungary even expanded its long-term contract with Gazprom in 2024. Slovakia now sources Russian gas via Hungary, bypassing Ukraine as a transit route. The report also highlights offshore intermediary structures tied to Soviet-era oil networks and Russian firms as key enablers of this dependency. They act as middlemen in crude purchases, creating inflated markups and shielding transactions from oversight. In nuclear energy, Hungary and Slovakia have doubled their imports of Russian fuel since 2021. Despite signing deals with Western suppliers, both countries continue to source heavily from Russia. Hungary's POX-2 nuclear plant project, led by Rosatom and 80% financed by Russian loans, is flagged as a long-term strategic vulnerability, with classified contracts and escalating costs now projected at 15 billion euros, roughly 12% of Hungary's GDP. Critically, the report concludes that there are no technical barriers to diversification. The Adria pipeline can meet both countries' crude needs, and their refineries have proven capable of handling alternative sources. Expanded LNG access and interconnectors with neighboring EU states offer viable gas alternatives. The continued reliance on Russian energy is therefore portrayed not as a necessity, but as a deliberate political and economic choice. The Serbian president Aleksandar Vučić has pushed back against allegations made by Russia's foreign intelligence service that Serbia is supplying ammunition to Ukraine, stating that parts of the claim are inaccurate. According to remarks reported by local media, Vučić acknowledged that the issue had been discussed both privately and diplomatically with Russian President Vladimir Putin. A joint working group with Russian representatives has been informed to investigate the matter, and Vučić emphasized that some accusations are not grounded in fact. I love how he's very adamant that some of the accusations aren't true. He clarified that Serbia would terminate any defense contracts if it were proven that the final destination were involved in the ongoing war. However, he also underscored the importance of sustaining Serbia's defense industry, which employs over 23,000 people. He questioned where Serbia could feasibly export arms if it were restricted from selling to major markets such as the US, Turkey, and Arab nations. Yeah, he's just trying to make a buck, man. Russian intelligence claims made public on May 29th assert that Serbian ammunition continues to reach Ukraine despite Belgrade's officially neutral stance. Moscow accuses Serbia of using fraudulent end-user certificates, relying on intermediaries in countries like the Czech Republic, Poland, and Bulgaria to obscure the final recipient. Oh, isn't that terrible, using third-party countries to get around export restrictions? My goodness, what a country that does that must be horrible. This follows a June 2024 report from the Financial Times, which stated that Serbia had been quietly increasing its ammunition exports to Western countries, ultimately contributing to Ukraine's defense capabilities. At that time, Serbia did not deny the scale of the trade and acknowledged that the reported 800 million euros in sales was largely correct. And he framed the export as a significant component of Serbia's economic recovery and said that tracking the final destination of the shipments was not his responsibility. I like that guy. And finally this week, the Russian military has begun actively escorting oil tankers from its shadow fleet through the Gulf of Finland, according to the Finnish defense minister. The move follows a series of incidents of heightened regional tensions, including a reported airspace violation by 2 Russian aircraft on May 23rd, which Finnish authorities are still investigating. The Finnish Ministry of Defense noted a rise in Russian aerial movements near Finland's border since the country formally joined NATO. This is not the first incident. In 2024, on February 7th, a Russian government aircraft was suspected of entering Finnish airspace near the Hanko Peninsula, reportedly staying inside Finnish territory for several minutes before departing. These incursions have added to concerns over security and military activity in the Baltic Sea region. Tensions further escalated on May 14th when Estonia attempted to intercept the Jaguar, a Gabon-flagged tanker associated with Russia's shadow fleet. The vessel was sailing through international waters toward the Russian port of Primorsk. In response to Estonia's interception effort, carried out using a helicopter, surveillance aircraft, and patrol ship, Russia deployed an Su-35S fighter jet to escort the tanker. The ship refused to change course and eventually anchored near Gotland Island. Estonian authorities later reported that the Russian jet did not establish proper communication with Estonian air control, violating international aviation protocols. Portuguese F-16s deployed at Amari Air Base under NATO's Baltic Air Policing mission responded to the incident. So it appears Russia will be escorting Shadow Fleet tankers with warships for the foreseeable future. And that's it for the main headlines this week. We will now move to the 5 billion euros. The next segment.
Yeah, that would be me. Hello, guys. As always, I will now present this week's most important news from Germany regarding Ukraine. Just want to say in advance, Miro in the chat, you're a real one. Coming from Munich, not being a Bayern Munich fan is like, it's the best. But back to the topic. This week, we only have one item on the agenda. However, it's a really, really big one. As you have might heard, during the visit of the Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky to Germany, the German government announced a new military aid package totaling around 5 billion euros. Just in advance, the money of this package, or the money for this package, was already approved by the Bundestag's Budget Committee in March 2025, when Scholz was the Chancellor of Germany. So, strictly speaking, the amount of Germany's military assistance has not increased. They only bound the money approved a couple of months ago to specific use cases. Just to want to, for full transparency. Let's talk briefly about this, the contents of this package. Germany finally starts participating into the Danish model, which was invented last year, and invests a couple of €100 million into Ukrainian-made far-reaching weapon systems as well as medical equipment. While the exact amount of the specific equipment was not officially mentioned, the German Welt reported that Germany is investing about 400 million euros into 3 different weapon systems: the Liuti long-range one-way attack drones, the Bars mini-cruise missile, and the Flamingo interceptor UAVs. In addition to that, the German government also pledged ammunition packages for various weapon systems, land weapon systems, firearms, 4 Iris TSLM fire units, and missiles worth 2.2 billion euros, and with an estimated cost of around 150 million euros per fire unit. We are talking about a huge amount of missiles there, which is very, very good news. Germany also pledged funding for different maintenance facilities in Ukraine. Welt reported that KNDS, which is responsible for the Panzerblitze, for example, or for the Gepards, is getting funding, and the German drone manufacturer Quantum Systems confirmed to me, for example, that they also have received funding for their production facility and maintenance repair facility in Ukraine, as well as for the increase of production capacities in Ukraine. And a couple of months ago, they reported that they are doubling their production capacities in Ukraine. So it looks like the German government is also going to finance that. And they also finance, the German government also will finance a significant part of the Starlink network in Ukraine. And finally, last part would be funding for the Ukrainian military command and control and communication system. No details given. I think that would be Delta or some other comparable system. So very, very extensive package. And in my opinion, especially the contract with Dear Defense, the 2.2 billion euro air defense package, and the investment into the Ukrainian defense industry will have a great impact over time. And yeah, just for your info, it's already shown in the background. I've written a very detailed article on the whole package, something around 3,500, 3,600 words per language on the military aid package, both in German and English available. So if you're interested in a very detailed explanation of all contents in the package, yeah, please go check it out on my website. And yeah, in case nobody has questions about it, that would be my segment. So back to you, Joseph.
Hey, looking good over in Germany. Well, I thought that was the big news this week, and also that Ukraine managed to hit some guys in Vladivostok. But then, of course, we woke up this morning, or I guess for you guys, it was the evening. I don't know, Europe time. Anyway, some crazy stuff happened, and I guess Erlend and maybe Colby are probably the best equipped among us right now to discuss. So you're probably going to hear a lot of noise about this because there's a pretty big deal. We'll do our best, though, to just try to give a breakdown of what happened first. That'll be our main goal here, is to just tell you guys exactly what happened with this whole thing. So, Mr. Erlend, I'll turn it over to you.
Yeah, thank you. So I'm gonna try and summarize what happened briefly. Although I just want to say that there's a lot of we still need a lot of confirmation, and also battle damage assessment has not been done completely yet. So take that as a precaution. But yeah, today the SBU launched a special operation codenamed Pavutina, or which is translated as spiderweb, and it targeted at least 5 Russian strategic air bases. According to SBU statements, the operation hit multiple air bases deep within Russian territory, including Belaya, Olenia, Diagilova, and Ivanovo airfield, and also there was a failed or it looks like there was a failed attempt at the Ukrainka airbase, where one of the containers that launched the small drones caught fire before the operation started. Several aircraft are confirmed destroyed. I think at least 6-7 are confirmed on video, but we have also seen plumes of smoke coming up from other air bases where there is a lack of footage from the FPV drones themselves. Images and videos that are authenticated by Ukrainian officials depict drones being remotely launched by concealed launchers. They're concealed as it looks like mobile houses or container structures, which had drones concealed in the ceiling. These seem to have been driven to various locations close to airfields without the drivers knowing that these containers contained actually, and were just parked at some location next to the airfield, where they then launched the attack. At least that's from the preliminary reports from people posting from local groups, that the drivers didn't necessarily know what was going to happen. At least confirmed targets are Tu-95 strategic bombers, Tu-22 M3 long strike bombers, and some AN-12 aircrafts as well, and possibly also A-50 early warning aircraft. Russian authorities, of course, are now in disarray and panic, and have stated that this was a terrorist attack. I don't know what to say about that. We can come back to that later. They claim that no casualties occurred. That is obviously not true. There is at least one video which depicts Russian that goes to sleep. Lots of Ukrainian sources and media, amongst them also the Kyiv Independent, confirms or reports that they've been told by the SBU or sources within the SBU that 41 aircraft has been destroyed. That is a very significant amount of strategic aircraft. So I hope we can get some better confirmation of that in the coming days and hours. I wanted to say one more thing before we go to the discussion. Where did I post it? One sec. Yeah, so according to the SBU, 34% of the strategic cruise missile carriers at the main airfields of the Russian Federations were hit. So yeah, that's more or less my report, hastily put together before the stream now. But I think we can have a lot more discussion about this. By the way, the videos that you see are some of the videos coming from people on the ground filming these trucks, and also directly from the drone feeds themselves. Okay, maybe Colby, you want to comment on how significant it is if it's confirmed that 33% of the strategic cruise missile launcher fleet is out.
Colby, one of the worst days in Russian military aviation history, or the worst day? Sorry, go ahead.
One of the worst. I mean, I guess that depends on whether we are including the Soviet Union within that. If we're just looking at Russia post-dissolution, then this would certainly be the worst day so far. If we're including the USSR, then obviously not, because Russian or the Soviet Air Force suffered obviously pretty severe losses during the Second World War. But certainly since dissolution, we haven't seen any losses on this magnitude before. So very, very significant. It's pretty self-evident that losing a third of the strategic bomber fleet is a pretty catastrophic blow to the Russian Air Force, if confirmed, of course, with that caveat. As Erlend mentioned, we don't have any sort of comprehensive battle damage assessment yet of all the air bases. So we have, I mean, the video that we're watching on screen right now is pretty spectacular, but certainly not conclusive of what is being claimed by the Ukrainians right now. So we have to wait and see. We have to get satellite imagery to confirm exactly what the full extent of aircraft losses is. But even anything approaching that would be catastrophic for them. And even based on what we know so far, based on the considerable information that actually has been released, this is still extremely significant strategically and operationally. Yeah, it's a pretty big deal.
I just wanted to mention the comparison between the Russian losses of the Air Force or the Soviet losses in the Second World War and the Air Force. I wouldn't say that you can compare the strategic importance of the fleet at that time to how it is now. So if you just look at it materially wise, probably there were some events. I know there were several events where they lost a lot of aircrafts in the Second World War. But the significance, I think, I would argue that even what we've seen now, and if, of course, confirmed the 33% or the 41 aircraft is by far more devastating to Russia strategically, because this is such a big part of their so-called nuclear triad as well. And also a very, very important part of their conventional warfare platform, at least before 2022, because as we've seen, they haven't really managed to utilize their strategic bombers to a very satisfying extent to affect the outcome of operations. But still, this is just on the strategic level enormous, in my opinion.
Yeah, certainly. And Russia has extremely limited ability to regenerate these losses. The T-95, T-22M, those have been out of production for decades. The Tu-160, which is sort of the newest member of their strategic bomber fleet, there's a very, very small number of those have been getting produced in recent years. So if they've lost a third, that's not something that they can easily replace. So it's a permanent losses to their overall fleet size. Essentially, it's not something that's going to be replaced anytime soon. They don't have the means to do that on any sort of relevant time frame. So it's going to have significant impacts on their ability to generate these cruise missile raids into Ukraine, because these are the aircraft that are responsible for executing those missions. So could be it would be very good to get John on at some point in time so we can talk about the state of Russia's complex raids into Ukraine and what we might expect with the trend lines going forward, and how much less ordnance they're going to be able to send their way.
Yeah, and even though whenever we see reports of long-range strikes from Russia on Ukraine, there is a lot of drones today, right? A couple of hundred drones on some of the days where there's the most intense strikes on Ukraine. It still is an extremely important weapon for Russia to have in their arsenal, even if we kind of see a limited effect of cruise missiles. It doesn't compare to the drones doesn't compare to the destructive level of some of these missiles that they could launch with these bombers that are no longer usable, and that is going to have an effect on the war. But I think more importantly, strategic level for Russia, this is such a big blowback that they would have to reconsider their position on the war, and that is just a huge success from Ukraine. I think this day is the most important day of the war yet because of this.
Dang. So if you go on Twitter right now, right, guys, like I would say the vibe is very much like, regardless of how people feel about I would say like the people who aren't typically paying attention to this right now are all saying like, oh, drones are like the future, obviously, right? I think the vibe is very much like, a gun just killed a knight in armor or something like that, right? And everyone's like, oh, military revolution, big fancy plane just got blowed up by a little FPV drone. Harken a new era. I don't know. Do you guys have any thoughts on that idea? Like, or I don't know. Do you think it's like overblown, or what do you think?
Yeah, it's a good question. So this is actually something very important to emphasize. This is not a novel concept. The United States Department of Defense, the Air Force in particular, but all the services really, Marine Corps, especially because they're an expeditionary force, they have all been thinking about this exact scenario for a very long time. How do we protect air bases, both in the United States, in CONUS and OCONUS outside the continental United States, whether that's Hawaii and Alaska, but also just foreign military bases abroad? How do we protect those against a broad spectrum of threats, including small unmanned aerial systems that could be deployed out of things like shipping containers, either via land or via sea? This is not a scenario that nobody has conceived of before. It's a problem set that the United States certainly has been working on for a very long time and has been working on developing countermeasures. And obviously, we've seen lots of Ukrainian attacks against Russian air bases before, but nothing close to this this scope and scale. So many simultaneous attacks executed in such an elaborate way, with FPVs out of shipping containers from tractor trailer trucks. But it's not a novel concept. But the impacts are fairly obvious that all countries are going to have to put a lot more resourcing into force protection at high value military installations if they want to prevent this from happening. So it's going to have significant impacts for all militaries that have that problem to think about if they have if they want to protect their high value assets, whether those are strategic bombers or otherwise. We've seen that now this is definitely reality. It's been something that has been expected for some time, and now the Ukrainians are really the first to execute it at scale and with considerable success based on, again, the limited information we have right now. So it is very significant, but it would be incorrect to say that it is totally revolutionary and that the Ukrainians are doing something that's never been conceived of. It's definitely been conceived of, but they are the first to be able to execute. But of course, there's not many other countries that are presented with the circumstances in which they could do an operation like this, because they're not in a war with a peer adversary like Russia. But certainly it's going to force a lot of people in the United States and in the Russian military as well to think about how they can better protect their assets and what additional resourcing they're going to have to allocate to that mission set and what trade-offs that involves, because resources are not finite, obviously. Delivering more resources to force protection at these installations means that those assets have to be reallocated from something else, or more money has to be invested in creating those assets in the first place, and that means less money is available for other priorities. So there's a lot of very significant budget implications here for both sides in how they're going to deliver that base protection to ensure that you're not going to lose such high value assets to what are pretty cheap drones. That said, obviously Ukraine has invested a huge amount of time and money into this operation as well. They said that they've been planning it for a year and a half. So Ukraine has put a lot into this, but still it's obviously the cost benefit is still drastically in their favor, even with just a limited number of aircraft that we know are destroyed. It's definitely worthwhile for them to invest that much time and effort and money into developing this operation.
Yeah, and I just want to emphasize one of the advantages with such an operation is that you don't have the range restrictions, which Ukraine have been having a lot of troubles with, because these shipping containers have seemingly been they could freely drive wherever they needed to drive in Russia. They've gone to the most important bases that Ukraine needed to take out. They didn't go where they could go, which is one of the limitations with both their missile program and also their long-range strike drone program, right? So the combination of Ukraine getting more capabilities on the more conventional long-range strike program and these type of attacks will be a consideration that Russia needs to take when they decide what they want to do with the continuation of this war. And I think that new element is going to be very, very important for the future of the war and the outcome. I just wanted, yeah, I don't know if you can see. No, damn it, sorry. We'll change the screen sharing. So very interesting report came from I think it's a Russian OSINT group, but it seems to be more or less correct. But I just want to say that caveat that it's a Russian OSINT group. They seem to have geolocated the warehouse where the pictures of these shipping containers with the where the drones were deployed from were being built, maybe inside Russia, or assembled at least, prepared, assembled, what in some way in this facility, and this place is close to Kazakhstan. It's in Chelyabinsk or Chelyabinsk, some warehouse that they located, probably with some reverse image search, because they found some sort of rental announcement for this warehouse. So I think that's an indication that Ukraine may have basically transferred equipment via a third country into Russia, which is very far from Ukraine. And I think that's also an interesting aspect of this operation.
So, Erlend, when the Crimea bridge blew up the first time, right? They supposedly snuck some bombs on a truck and got it on the bridge, right? And then blew up like a fuel train, or there was some kind of chain of events they were able to orchestrate where it was, crazy what happened. But it looks like the Russians were able to set up extra guard patrols and search the vehicles and do a bunch of stuff where Ukraine hasn't been able to replicate that, and the bridge so far hasn't been significantly attacked again. This seems like a different situation where there's no amount of obviously, as Colby said, this particular attack was pretty sophisticated. It involved a coordinated strike on 6 targets, but just in general, this kind of approach of getting some drones in a truck and launching them at an airbase, that's not that there's no amount of patrols or bridge you can watch, you know what I mean, right? That's it's a vulnerability that Russia, I don't think, can address, right?
Yeah, and the thing is, preliminary reports, or at least some leaked reports from the SBU, saying that these drones were controlled with local, or through local 4G or 5G. I guess they don't have 5G in Russia, but basically mobile networks. So I guess the first reactions is going to be that the Russians are going to jam every airbase so that you won't be able to use your cell phone there. That's going to be an absolutely insane logistical issue for them, because they almost certainly have critical systems that run out of the cell networks. But I'm sure they're going to jam it anyway. But the thing is, it doesn't effectively eliminate this threat, because there are other ways of controlling drones like this. You may have an operator on the ground, or you may use satellite communication, or you may use completely autonomous drones. So yeah, you're right. I think that this kind of operation is going to be very, very difficult to stop, but at the same time, they're also very difficult to orchestrate. Like Colby mentioned, they spent a year and a half on this, planning this operation, right? So, but you're right. It puts a dilemma on the Russians. Is it worth it to continue this war? Because they may experience similar or even larger scale attacks that are conducted not necessarily in the exact same fashion, but similarly. And if they lost 33% of their strategic bomber fleet now, there's not that much left, right? So I would say this is a big dilemma for them.
Yeah. I don't know. Someone's asking, why were the photos leaked? I don't know, man. The Russians have a lot. Their information system works a little differently than ours. You have a lot of loosely aligned accounts that are sort of with the armed forces, sort of not, plausible deniability, etc. And they release stuff like this, and it's always hard to tell if they had official license to do so or not. I don't know, Erlend, do you want to talk about why would the Russians release this information about the warehouse?
Oh, I think he's referring to why the Ukrainians leaked the pictures of the drones on the containers. So I guess they know that whatever they do, the way the operation happened will eventually, the Russians will figure out how it worked, more or less. Not sure if they can do anything with the actual containers to figure out specifics of this technology, but in the end, showing what happened, I think it's probably a PR strategy by the Ukrainians. And when it comes to the warehouse, I assume that they evacuated that facility before before releasing the photos. I assume they evacuated the facility way before this operation started or was executed.
Yeah, I mean, the Ukrainians said that nobody who was involved in this operation was still in Russia at the time that it was executed. So it was all done remotely, which may or may not be true, but that's what they're saying. And so all of this, that everything the Ukrainians are putting out, this is very deliberate. It's not just, PR to generate support and so we can laugh at them here in the West. It's an information attack on Russia to create fear and paranoia and make them worried every time a truck goes by about what if there's a false roof in that thing, and it's going to cause the Russians to, they're going to be forced to implement, not successfully because the scope of the task before them is just too vast, but ideally they're going to want to be taking an extra close look at every single shipping container, every single truck coming in and out of the country. So it's really going to impact Russia's state security apparatus domestically as they try and work and figure out how can we mitigate this, not just locally with the force protection that I was talking about at air bases, but how can we tighten up borders? How can we ensure that the Ukrainians are not smuggling more drones in this fashion into the country? So by showing this right away, it's going to generate just a lot of paranoia on the Russians' part about how they can try and mitigate this. So I think it's all very carefully deliberated, and it's going to add further confusion and chaos beyond the actual attacks, and it's all just designed to really gum up the Russian state's security apparatus.
Yeah, the thing is, they're smuggling stuff in, like, there's so many sketchy boxes from Kyrgyzstan going into Russia every day. Like, how would you if you try to, like you were saying, there's like a trade-off there. If they start trying to choke on that down, then they start losing out on, getting all their little shady imports through third-party countries, right? So this is really a dilemma for them. Sorry, go ahead, Erlend.
No, I just wanted to say a confirming to what Colby said. And Russian security forces, the internal security forces, do not have infinite resources. So I'm sure that Master Puppet in the Kremlin is going to order the FSB to take every measure to make sure that this doesn't happen again, right? And thus, if the FSB and airport force protection personnel have to either employ more people or redirect their efforts towards looking into containers and jamming the cell networks around the airport, which is going to cause, as Stanimir pointed out in our internal chat, that for instance, payment terminals in Russia are all going off cell network. So then they will have to start wiring those, and all these kind of things are creating issues, which is making it more difficult long term to continue to do these measures. And eventually, if Ukraine wants, they will be able to slip through whatever measures the Russians are putting up, if they want to. It may take some time, but and that's the dilemma. Again, the people in the Kremlin are not that stupid that they don't know that this may happen again.
Yeah. So I guess any final thoughts on all this? It's a pretty big deal. It's I think, as Colby said, the worst day in military aviation history for like independent post Cold War Russia, indisputably. It's a historic day in terms of like this is the first, I would say, major incident of a like remote FPV drone attack on a major air asset. I don't know what you. I'm not the guy to make all the terminology for this, but it's a real big deal what happened, and we'll definitely do our best over the next week or so, I would say, to get all the usual information that is gathered about such things. I say we. I'm not going to do any of this, but there's a lot of people, a lot of very hardworking people, both at Tochnyi and friends with Tochnyi, that will be picking this all apart, looking at the satellite information, looking at the various videos, combing them over, and determining exactly where and when and how it all happened. So we'll definitely keep you guys appraised of like what's going to be the result of all this, and confirm and dispute anything that we find in terms of our actual open source stuff versus what the media says about it. But yeah, I mean, so far it seems like it's been pretty. I don't know. The Ukrainians have released some pretty clear information, so it's good that we're not super confused about what happened. But there's still definitely a lot of details that we'd like to know a little more about. So yeah, I think that's pretty much it. Does anyone else have anything they want to add, or do we have any questions from chat about it?
Well, I just wanted to emphasize that it's not that we distrust the Ukrainians when they say that they took out 41 aircraft, but we, for the sake of verification and also to solidify Ukraine's argument here, it is super important that independent groups look at satellite imagery and of course third-party filmed footage like we see on the screen now, to dissect all the bits and pieces into a kind of event a timeline, or battle damage assessment, whatever you call it. So that we'll try and do that. I know that Daniele is eager to do it, so he couldn't be here on the stream now, but he said he was very eager to at least verify some of the stuff that we've seen until now, and I'm sure we'll see some very interesting satellite imagery coming out tomorrow or the days coming soon. But I just wanted to mention the fact that a lot of people were focused on something that is going to happen in Istanbul tomorrow, right? Joseph, you mentioned something before the stream.
I'm supposed to know this. I think that the second round of talks are supposed to start tomorrow between Russia and Ukraine in Istanbul. This is something that Russia proposed. Ukraine has been, basically going along with the idea of having the ceasefire talks because the U.S. has sort of insisted on it, and Europe has kind of gone along with it. So there is a second round of talks, I think, happening between the Ukrainians and the Russians in Turkey, and the Russian delegation just arrived. So that's going to be a bit awkward, I think. But of course, the last meeting, although it seems like no real diplomatic progress was made, in other words, from what we understand of what happened, the Russians basically just made a bunch of dumb demands that, no one's going to listen to. And then, it was over in 2 hours and they walked away. But the good thing that did emerge out of that was a what was called 1,000 for 1,000 prisoner swap. So 1,000 Ukrainians were repatriated, and that included some Mariupol defenders and civilians and all sorts of other people. So that's, I would say, a positive development. So even though we don't think, or I shouldn't speak for everyone else, but I don't think much will come of these peace talks, so-called peace talks with Russia and Istanbul. We could maybe hope that there might be more POW swaps. Those are always good. We think it's good to get Ukrainians home because they're constantly being mistreated by Russia. They're starved and beaten and forced to say the Russian Pledge of Allegiance and sing the Russian anthem, and they're abused in other ways that YouTube doesn't even want me to talk about. So it's really always a good thing to get those guys home.
Yeah, I tweeted about this this morning. They are supposed to have further talks in Istanbul tomorrow. It'll be interesting to see if the Russians decide to back out at the last second over this, which it seems plausible that they might do that and say, oh, well, we were going to talk, but now we're not because these terrorist Ukrainians blew up all of our planes. But one interesting thing is that Reuters actually published the Ukrainian government's negotiating framework for these talks tomorrow. So that is available. It's on my Twitter feed right now. I pasted it all formatted decently, so you can see what the Ukrainian government's position is going into these talks. And one of the terms was that they wanted, I believe, a total exchange of all remaining prisoners. So rather than these, smaller deals that have been happening throughout the war, they wanted to just see everybody that's still being held exchanged. And of course, they also want to have all the Ukrainian children that were abducted also returned, and any other civilians that are being held in detention to be returned, along with a lot of other things. The same sort of things that we've seen from the Ukrainian government consistently in terms of their expectations for how this would work in terms of a ceasefire being implemented, and that then further negotiations over territory following the successful implementation of the ceasefire. So that information is now available, and we'll find out tomorrow, I guess, whether those talks actually happen or whether the Russian delegation decides that they want to walk away from the talks.
Yeah, thanks, Colby. Well, I've got you here. I haven't been reporting on this for the news stuff just because I don't think there's been anything meaningful that's happened yet, but there's been a little bit of movement in the US, right? There's a couple of congressmen and senators that are trying to get some things to help Ukraine passed. Is there anything you would want to update people on in terms of what's going on in the US right now, or not really much to pay attention to?
Well, the main thing is that in the Senate, there is a sanctions bill from Senators Lindsey Graham and Blumenthal, which would implement extremely significant sanctions, including secondary sanctions, onto countries that are still doing business with the Russians. And this sanctions bill already has over 80 co-sponsors or 80 signatures on it. So nearly every member of the United States Senate has said, we support this legislation. And there is definitely growing frustration in the Senate that Putin is obviously not negotiating in good faith. And there is significant bipartisan agreement, including from, a lot of senators who I wouldn't put into the super pro-Ukraine camp, but are still have signed on to this legislation and say that, yes, we should implement much more aggressive sanctions on Russia because they're not negotiating in good faith. So we're sort of slowly inching closer to that legislation being taken up and voted on. What the House would do with it is unclear, but there's certainly a majority of members of the U.S. House as well that would certainly support this legislation. So then it just gets to the procedural question of whether leadership would be willing to put it on the floor or whether they would have to force that with a discharge petition. the president has not weighed in on the bill yet. I don't think. I think he's noted that it's an option, but I don't believe that he's certainly not endorsed its passage. I don't recall whether he said he didn't want to see it pass, but he's definitely acknowledged that there's this bill, and that could be something that might be Russia might be subjected to if they keep quote unquote tapping him along. But Trump seems to have gotten a little bit more irritated and annoyed with Putin, but still has not taken any unilateral steps on his own part to do anything that would force the Russians to come to the table. So we will see. The sanctions bill is definitely the main thing to look out for, and then Trump is obviously chaotic and unpredictable. So I'm not holding my breath on him having any sort of come to Jesus moment, so to speak. But the Senate may end up just forcing his hand and putting this legislation through, and he wouldn't have the ability to veto it with the amount of support it has. So if that passes, then that will be quite bad news for Russia, because it's going to impact their bottom line quite significantly. And of course, the Europeans could be doing a lot still on their own initiative, and there's been some moves towards that, to doing things against Russia's shadow fleet. But the Europeans certainly don't need to wait for American leadership on this question either. There's an awful lot they can do on sanctions enforcement on their own, and all of that is still long overdue, because Russia continues to fund their war in large part with all their energy exports. And I think you noted during your news segment, Joseph, that we still have all these countries in Europe that are still fairly reliant on Russia's energy exports. So that needs to change.
Yeah, I think Trump's latest statement was something to the effect, which is something he said before, which was like that we're trying to make a peace deal with Russia right now, or like, I'm trying to make a deal with Russia. I'm not going to sanction them yet, something like that. So, we'll see. But I think you painted the picture well, which is like, this is a pretty significant amount, like 80 out of 100 senators. You've got bipartisan support. It's very unusual to have that level of like support on anything. So it really would put a lot of pressure on Trump to either, like, I don't know, he'd have to sacrifice a lot to like not do anything about this bill if it actually got through. So yeah, I think that's like a good place we're at. And I guess the last thing is like Lindsey Graham, I think, went to Europe this week to like go talk to the Europeans about stricter sanctions. And I assume he's kind of promising like, hey, I'm going to get this thing passed and we're going to really sanction them good. So I don't know. We'll see. It's yeah, we'll definitely like report on it as soon as there's a real movement. But as kind of Colby confirmed for me, it sounds like we're still waiting for like the shoe to drop. There's like a couple of procedural things that need to happen before the House needs to, basically, we need to know what the House feels about all this first. Yeah. Any other questions in chat that we should cover, Mr. Erlend?
I don't know. I just wanted to show more of the footage. So I just want to describe the scene we're watching now. If you know Russian, you should go and find this video. It's all over Twitter, because the guy is, as we talked about before stream, Joseph, he's just blabbering out nonsense and swear words, and seems completely resignated to the fact that he's standing next to a container which is destroying a significant amount of his country's strategic bomber fleet. Obviously, he may not know, but he should understand that there's something very serious going on next to him.
I love the wild berries truck going by. It's like Russian Amazon for people who don't know.
Yeah. I guess, this war is terrible. There is nothing I think is good about this war at all. But there are some moments where when you finally feel some happiness even in a dark time as war. And I hope that a lot of Ukrainians are finding some joy in this, because this is exactly, the aircrafts that have been fundamental in terrorizing them for 3 years. And I just hope some of them have had some nice bubbles in their fridge, because this is something the Ukrainians ought to celebrate. It's an absolutely magnificent success, and all honor to the guys at the SBU that planned and executed this mission almost flawlessly.
Yep. So yet another David and Goliath story, as someone in chat said. It's I think Ukraine was obviously, in terms of the Navy, Ukraine was written off right away. They effectively didn't have a Navy after Russia seized Crimea and several ships, Ukrainian ships. But they managed to neutralize, about 80% of the Black Sea Fleet so far. Like, the Black Sea Fleet basically can't operate normally. They can send 1 or 2 ships out to launch missiles. That's about it. And then again, the Ukrainian Air Force, everyone was like, that would last 5 minutes in a war with Russia. We're now in, multiple years ongoing. And the Ukrainian Air Force is not only active and growing and adopting new planes into its fleet, but these operations are like, I don't think anyone at the beginning of this would have said, "Oh, well, Ukraine will knock out the Black Sea Fleet and then knock out a third of Russia's strategic air fleet." Like, that's I don't know. It's a real achievement, as Erlend said. It's a big deal, it's just I don't know. Congratulations to Ukraine on a successful operation, and we hope that it hastens the end of the war, I guess. So I don't know. Anything else before we wrap up, Erlend? Should we promote anything that's going on over at Tochnyi?
I mean, go check out the latest article from Stanimir. If you didn't, it's great. It's about the Russian automobile industry and its troubles, but also some successes, mostly troubles.
Yep, it's always fun. Stanimir has a lot of very deep knowledge about not only the Russian economy, but like at a regional level, what's going on in Russia. He reads all those regional reports and minutiae. So check out Stanimir's article. We'll try to get Stanimir either on the stream, or I'll do another video segment with Stanimir where I'm his wide-eyed assistant as he takes me through the dysfunctional land of Russian industry. So I think with that, we can go ahead and wrap up. It's a little early, but I think we've hit on everything we want to hit on this week. So I will implore everyone once again to please do like and subscribe to Tochnyi on YouTube. Hit that like button if you could subscribe for us, and that little bell. We really appreciate it. It helps us out a lot. We get demonetized sometimes, playing this video footage. It's not a good idea. YouTube's not going to like that we did that, but we did it for you. We did it because we wanted to show you what happened. So we appreciate your support in spite of the YouTube algorithm penalizing us for showing you such violent things. Oh, is there a question in chat? Sorry if I missed something. Please, Mr. Maurice, did I miss a question?
Yeah, there was a question I'm not really sure if anybody can answer because it's very specific. Is there some confirmation about how many planes are destroyed? From my view, what I heard is what Erlend said, and I've read, not confirmed of course, but I've read that 22 planes have been hit, but it doesn't mean that they are destroyed. So I'm not sure if anybody here can answer that question.
Yeah, so the 22 Go was apparently strategic bombers, and then the rest of the planes hit may have been A-50s or AN-12s or IL-76s, different other strategic important airplanes, but that are for either transport, refueling, or early warning radar. The news about the early warning radar plane being hit is by far the most important of those that are not the strategic bombers, in my opinion. But I haven't seen any footage that confirms that an A-50 was hit. But that would be very big because they already lost 2, and I think they only had 4 or 5 operational ones. So that basically means that their early warning capability is no longer operational to a full extent. That would mean that they won't be able to continuously fly any of these planes in any areas, and it was already a very limited capability. You would want to have many more early warning radar aircraft than just 4, ideally. So yeah, but yet again, as I said in the beginning, we only see, I think, 6 or 7 airplanes being hit in the videos that have been released. So for now, we can only confirm that. But there are, and those were from 2 different air bases, I think, Balaya and Olenia. But there are more videos confirming big plumes of smoke from at least 4 air bases. So we know that 4 air bases have been hit. But we don't know any specifics from those 2 other air bases, and also we don't know the full extent of the attack at Olenia and Balaya. So that's why we said in the beginning and also during the stream that we hope that there will be more footage or possibly some high-res satellite imagery that will enable us to do some really thorough battle damage assessment. So yeah, I guess that's... I saw there was also a question about how many A50s they have. I do think they only had 3 operational ones because I think they did put 1 more into service after the 2 were shot down, which then would put it at 3 or something. So maybe Colby knows more about that. I don't remember.
I don't know offhand how many they had operational right now, but it was not a large number in any case.
I think that was it. Thank you, Gao, for reminding us about the questions. Yeah, thanks. We always we like questions. We want to answer questions. We're just bad at seeing them, so we always appreciate when people point them out to us. Okay, so I think now I'm doing my outro. So as I said before, we always appreciate you guys liking and subscribing and spreading the word about us. We really got to fight that algorithm because we show you guys lots of spicy footage. So thanks so much for all your support. Thank you, of course, to our illustrious panel for joining us today, Mr. Erlend, Mr. Gao, Mr. Colby, and I guess I'll thank myself, as Mr. Germany to Ukraine asked me to do, for joining us today to discuss all the goings on. It was actually a pretty big news week. Ukraine first blew up some stuff in Vladivostok, which, I mean, if they can hit Vladivostok, there's nowhere left to hit. I thought that was a big deal, but then this happened. And then, of course, the German aid of 5 billion euros is a huge deal. So a big news week. Thanks so much for joining us to learn all the important information about it. And we will see you guys next week at 2100 Kyiv time, as we do every Sunday. Slava Ukraini.
Heroям slava.
On behalf of the brave.